Thanks for all the information. If other questions come in, we'll go ahead and get those answered after the fact here. We'll try to get all of them answered if we didn't get them asked during the session here. But let's move on. Next up, we've got Mr. Travis Cork, who's going to talk a little bit about MASH portable barriers. Travis is a transportation engineer in the design division, and he graduated from NDSU with a bachelor's degree in civil engineering. He's worked in our traffic safety section for 22 years. Travis, I'll let you take it away.
Thanks, Aaron. Today I'm just going to get a kind of a short overview of what's out there for the MASH portable barriers and where we're going. Right now we have, for existing inventory of portable barriers, we have NCHRP 350, and now the current thing is MASH, so we're looking at what we need to do to get them updated. The ones we have right now, the deflection is 76 inches for them. And currently we have 2,720 inches of the 30-inch ones and 475 of the 24-inch ones. And then that's about approximately 6 miles worth of barrier. In 2020, there was approximately 30 projects that had barriers on them, and they ranged in length or a number from just a few per project to some that had almost 350 barriers on their project. So when we started looking at this, we was looking out to see what was out there. There was over 50 different types of MASH barriers, portable barriers out there. There's concrete barriers, and concrete, they're much more durable. They're going to be typically heavier and a little bit harder to transport. Generally they do have less deflection though for the freestanding type anchoring, which the freestanding is basically there's no anchor at all. Most of the MASH tested ones were F shape, but there were a few New Jersey shape ones, and currently what we have are the New Jersey shape. There's also some steel ones out there. They're also pretty durable, but they're typically going to be lighter and much easier to transport. You can get quite a few more of them on a truck. They also have some plastic ones out there. Those are going to be like a water-filled ones. They generally have a limited use, and if we're going to use them later into the year, they would have to have some kind of a chemical additive to prevent freezing on them. There's both proprietary and non-proprietary, but the majority of the systems that were tested were proprietary systems. And anchorage, they varied from full anchorage to partial anchorage, and then also freestanding. But the majority of them that were tested were all anchored so that they could limit the deflection. So because there were so many, we had to come up with some kind of a point system to try to narrow down the choices. We kind of came up with some target criteria to use to look at them. For width and length, we were looking to try to get the barriers around 24 inches or less. Lengthwise, we were trying to get them for concrete 15 feet or less, and for steel 20 feet or less. For deflection, we were trying to get it right around 49 inches or less, and some of the systems, that was just kind of our target value. Some systems are obviously more, and then the anchored systems were obviously a lot less. Anchorage, we're trying to stay to the freestanding ones so we don't have to anchor them into the pavement. We're trying to make sure that they're non-proprietary so they can be made by anybody, so this will be a lot easier for us to get them. We wanted to do test level 3 at least, if not 4. Wanted to make sure that the barriers could be installed on curves easily, and that if they are proprietary, we could get them locally. So for the concrete options, we kind of came up with 4 options that kind of met most of those criteria. The first option was a JJ hook type. This is a proprietary system. It's got an F shape to them, but it doesn't have any loose parts. If you can kind of see in this picture here, the barrier is obviously not there, but they just kind of hook together like hands or whatever. So you just basically, when you're placing these, they need to be slipped together from the top down, just slid right on top of the other one. The width of the barrier is 24 inches, height is 32, and the length was 12 feet. And the dynamic deflection on this one was 64 inches, and that was for freestanding. So this didn't need to be anchored down, but they do have potential for being anchored if necessary. The second option was a quick change portable barrier. This is kind of a special barrier. It's actually kind of made for in bigger cities where they have a machine that can actually move them back and forth for changing the direction of lanes, but they also have temporary traffic control ability. It's a hinge type system, but this barrier is a lot more narrow. It's 18 inches wide, 32 inches tall, and it's much shorter. They're only 39 inches long. But the dynamic deflection on these was 41.4 inches, and that was for freestanding. But this system can also be anchored, and if you anchor it, then you don't need so much barrier beyond the length of need. The third system was Indiana anchored, and this one this one also has the JJ hook connection, so there would be no loose parts for the connection. This is a non-proprietary, however, and this one obviously has to have the plates anchored down to the pavement, but because the plates are anchored down, you can get with a 2-bolt type connection, it's a 13.3 inch deflection, and with 4 bolts, it's only 11.9 inch. And the width of these is again 24 inches, height's 31 inches, and the length is 10 feet. The fourth system is pretty similar to what we use now. This is, instead of a New Jersey type shape, it is actually a F shape. And this has a pin and loop connection similar to what we use now. But this one's also a non-proprietary. The width on this is only 22.5 inches compared to the majority of what we have now is 30 inches. The height's 32 inches and the length is 12.5 feet. And this was also tested for freestanding with a deflection of 79 inches, which is just a little bit more than what we have now. We also looked at the steel barriers, and we kind of had 2 that came out. There's the Hv2 barrier, and this one was, this is proprietary. It slides down just kind of like the JJ one. This is a narrower barrier, 17.7 inches wide, height 35 inches, and this has a length of 19 feet. This is a freestanding one, but can also be anchored at the ends. The deflection was 57.8 inches. The second type of one was it's basically similar to this concrete one, the quick change one. This one has a width of 24 inches, and that's just at the bottom there where it sits on the concrete, and then the rest of it's only 13 inches wide. And this one had a dynamic deflection of 47.6 inches, and that was freestanding. So where do we go from here? There's 2 options. We can either continue to do state furnished, or we could do some contractor furnished. And I know we've actually had some contractor furnished on some of the projects lately. For state furnished, the nice thing what we would have is we would have some on hand. We could use them for emergencies or any other kind of state needs that if we had to. We wouldn't have to worry about missing parts. We wouldn't have to worry about keeping up the inventory, tracking them, finding out where they're at. And then also if we do shelved projects, tracking could become an issue because if they sit for very long, we have those scheduled to go on that project, but that project is pushed and then another one comes up, then we have to make sure that we have some available. If it's contractor furnished, we wouldn't have to worry about maintenance. The contractor would be maintaining their own inventory. And we could maybe even do tighter specs, if deflection was critical, we could maybe specify a tighter deflection and the contractor would be responsible to get a barrier that would work for that. The cons, of course, would be that because the contractor has the inventory, we wouldn't have any on hand for state emergencies. We maybe would have to rent them or something like that. The barriers would have to be certified for every project. The contractor might have to have multiple different types of deflections, different barriers on hand, depending on how we specify what we need. And they may cost more. We just don't have enough background. We haven't had enough projects to figure out if the contractor furnished ones were actually going to cost more. So that's kind of our options right now, and that's kind of where we're at. So if you have any questions or anything, you can just contact me, and I can answer whatever you need.
Thanks, Travis. We actually did get a question that came through wondering, contractors, do they put in place these state-owned barriers, or do the district forces put these in place for projects? If they're state furnished, the contractor has to go and pick them up from wherever storage yard they are. And it could be multiple storage yards and it could be a ways from the project, but yes, they go pick them up and they place the barriers. Very good. All right. Thanks, Travis.